Hi everybody, today is June 20th, 2017. I'm Tom Bracey with Remax Elite Homes, and today we're just going to do a short little thing on why use a realtor. It costs a lot of money, doesn't it? So why would you do that? Okay. First of all, I think it's good to talk about, promoting yourself, okay, in your business and what you do in the real estate industry. So I always have the theory of what I call ABP, always be promoting, okay? With all the technology that's out there now, all the internet sites, Zillow and so on, there's a lot of people and a lot of entities out there that want to take your job, basically, okay? So we have to be really good at promoting what we do and making sure the public knows that we're not replaceable. You cannot replace realtors with technology, as a lot of people would like you to believe, okay? So it's really important to let people know what you do and why you do it, all right? You might run across situations where, you're meeting with your clients. So let's say you're meeting with your buyers. You always want to have a list of things that you do for these people and why you do it, okay? For example, you're going to explain to your buyers that you not only show them properties, but in the process you're going to recommend inspections, or you're going to recommend pulling comparables so they know what the market's like. So very important to have a list of things in your buyer packets to explain what you do. The same for sellers. In your pre-listing package, you're always going to have a list of things that you do for them and why those things are so important. So in meeting with our clients, we're going to need to know what we're talking about, what we do, why we do it. And you might be in a social gathering where you're just out with friends, or people are always talking about real estate. No matter if you're out at a restaurant or you're just anywhere, you never know. In the grocery store, people are always talking about real estate. So there's going to be a lot of unexpected times where people are going to talk about real estate, realtors, and what they do, and you've got to be ready to defend yourself and talk about the importance of real estate and believing in what you're doing. There's 4 things that we want to emphasize, okay? Again, having a list of things that we're going to be able to explain to our buyers and sellers. And I think the big thing in that is value. You're creating value. People do not mind spending money for something if they feel they're getting something out of it, if they feel they're getting value out of it, okay? So time and money are a big thing to people today. And again, people have no problem using real estate agents or using any service that anybody provides if they feel they're getting value for that, okay? The second thing that you want to emphasize to people is that this is a huge investment. You're not buying a loaf of bread here. Buyers need to understand this is a huge investment, and it's a complex transaction. It's so easy to make a mistake. Sellers can make mistakes by not maybe knowing they can get their property pre-inspected ahead of time. Buyers can make a mistake because a realtor, again, is going to advise them on what a good buy is, what types of condition you look for, what types of features in a property increase value or maybe not, maybe decrease value, okay? So it's so easy to make a mistake when you're buying and selling real estate that it can end up costing, a tiny mistake can end up costing thousands of dollars, okay? So again, it's a huge investment, it's a complex transaction, and it's very easy to make mistakes. We all have horror stories of situations we've either heard of or actually been involved in where people did not use a realtor, and don't be afraid to share those stories with people. One that comes to mind to me is the people that don't use a realtor to buy a home, and they find out later on that the house has had a huge termite damage, and maybe they didn't get an inspection, or they find, they have to tear the house apart to fix it up because of the condition of the property that they were not made aware of because the seller maybe wasn't forthcoming. Okay, so, and again with sellers as well. I mean, realtors are going to be helping in all steps of the transaction, and not just in selling the property, but is the buyer pre-approved? Do they have a house to sell? How are you going to coordinate closing and moving and possession and all those things? So don't be afraid to share these stories with people so they, again, appreciate what you do, okay? The fourth thing is creating a win-win situation. I think realtors are really good at that. At the end of the day, everybody feels like they won. The seller feels like they got a good deal, they were treated respectfully, they were given good advice, they they got a great value. And the same for a seller. At the end of the day, they're more than happy to, they're glad that they worked with a realtor because, again, it saved them so much time and money and created a big value for them as well. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about real quickly is the confusion, what I call commission confusion, and that is the role of the real estate commission in this whole thing of what realtors do. The commission confusion is extremely confusing, and the general public doesn't understand that. First of all, if you look up the definition of commission in the dictionary, it's something that comes after the sale, okay? It's the last thing that happens. And I think the confusion for a lot of sellers is they don't realize that they don't know what, they need to know what they're gonna net out of their house. And a lot of times that doesn't happen until they actually sign a contract, they go to the closing and find out what they're gonna be netting out of their house. So a lot of sellers have this anxiety over commission before they even list their home, when really we need to emphasize to them that, hey, look, the commission comes last. Here's the advice we're going to be giving you throughout this whole process, and here's what we anticipate you're going to net out of your property. And that really helps them understand the role of the commission in the whole transaction. I don't even like to use the word commission. I like to say it's more of a fee for a service. So when I'm working with sellers and we're going over our listing presentation, we're going over our net sheet, we're explaining to them that I explain to them that this is a fee for the service that we provide for you, okay? And sometimes sellers get all worked up over, well, how much do you charge? Well, this guy charges this, or this gal said she would charge that. Again, you can't really determine the value until actually a sale is over with, because a good realtor can negotiate 2% or 3% in a commission just by being a good negotiator, where the other agent who offered the lower commission might not do a good job in getting a buyer, might not do a good job in negotiating, and actually end up netting less for that seller than a realtor who will maybe charge a little bit more. So again, we have to be constantly be thinking of these things to make sure people understand it. For a buyer, I think probably the big example for a buyer and them understanding the role of the commission is, number one, they're not paying the commission. And buyers get, again, really confused because of all these websites, the for sale by owners that are out there, and they're getting the impression from the seller, the for sale by owner, that they're going to get a really great deal on this house because they're not paying a realtor, okay? Commission has nothing to do with the value of the property. We have to constantly reinforce that to buyers, that the commission, if a seller's paying a fee to sell their property, it has nothing to do with the value of the property whatsoever. And we can prove that to them because we're pulling comparable sales. Some of the comparable sales we find may The seller may have paid a commission, they may not have paid a commission. We're looking at what the property sold for, and again, the amount of money they paid to sell it has really nothing to do with it, no more than the amount of money they paid for the attorney to do the deal. The money that was paid for an appraisal to do the deal has nothing to do with the actual value of the property. Okay? So again, make sure that you can explain the confusion about commission and make sure that people are clear about that. Okay? So we don't want our buyers missing out on getting really good advice from us. We don't want our sellers missing out on getting really good advice from us. These are the things that we do. These are things we're proud of doing. These are things that we're happy to do for people, and we get paid to do it, just like anybody else does in their job. Okay? So hopefully that will help us in understanding that it doesn't cost a fortune. Instead of asking, can you afford it, you really need to be getting across to people, can you afford not to use a realtor? Okay? So have a great day. We'll see you next time. Take care.